They have to be able to do that or go find somebody else. I mean, it's just the way it is in the league.
Well, it looks weird, but it seems to be working. We're talking kickoffs here on the SumerSports show today. The changes you need to know, the data that tells us it's working, and the ways that the players and coaches might have to do things differently as a result. Welcome to the SumerSports show. Lindsay Rhodes with Sam Bruckhouse, set to welcome a handful of friends in just a moment to help us tell this story, a story that has been years in the making, Sam.
Starting with the XFL, this has been a 5-year story. There's been data points. There's been research. This is perfectly made for us, Lindsay. I'm excited to tackle it today.
Shawn Syed's been tracking these kickoff developments for a long time now. He's going to join us momentarily, as will a couple of special teams veterans. We've got the NFL's 6th all-time leading scorer, longtime kicker Matt Stover. Baltimore fans will be particularly familiar with his career. Also joining us, one of our colleagues here at Sumer, who coached in the league for 26 years. A majority of those years were spent focusing on special teams. That is Kevin Spencer. We're hoping that it's a conversation that you will not find anywhere else that will help your understanding of the kickoffs that you see on Sunday. But before we get to that, it was a rough week for quarterback health, Sam.
It's really tough. We've seen in recent years kind of more injuries. It's been talked about with regards to the youth and the cap and the way the 18-week season goes. But it looks like we're going to be seeing a lot of backups this week, Lindsay.
Burrow out 3 months, maybe, with a
Basically
toe
for
injury.
the season, yeah.
Oh my gosh. By the way, we need to readjust. I heard somebody else said this on Twitter, and I fully agree. We need to adjust the name for the turf toe injury, because it just sounds like such a nothing injury, like turf toe. And it's actually much more serious than it sounds. So I am going to now medically advocate for a different name.
It can literally mean that you snapped your toe in half, basically. That's not good, and that doesn't heal quick because you have to walk around, or even if you have to take a shower or anything, you got to use your feet. And
Let's
so
hope he does that. Yeah.
right. And so it really is a misleading injury, because it can be something you can play through, but it can also be something that involves multiple sprains and multiple breaks and hairline fractures and things like that.
So we're going to see Jake Browning take over. I will say this, as far as backups go in the league, Jake Browning is one that I don't mind seeing more of. They've reached out to a couple of veterans to bring them on, but I would assume that, Browning is somebody they probably feel relatively comfortable moving forward with. He's looked pretty good in the past, and so this could be an interesting development for him.
Right. When you look at his play in 23, when Burrow went down, he was around an average to slightly above average quarterback. That is in about half the snaps of a normal starter. But there's been so much discussion going around about how the Bengals should trade for Kirk Cousins or Jameis Winston. And I just don't think that's in the cards. I think they're fine to go with Jake Browning, especially given that they have a healthy Jamar Chase, who had an excellent game last week, basically took over on every single play that he was involved in. You got a healthy T. Higgins, and for the most part, that offense is together. I think Zach Taylor is going to continue having an excellent offense. I'm going to be interested in how this offense changes without Burrow. Perhaps we'll see a little bit more run, a little bit more under center. But overall, I think they're in good hands, while not suspected to be the number one offense in the league with Jake Browning.
I feel like this maybe falls under the bucket, and I'm saying this sarcastically, of the number one fantasy pick curse, right? It's not directly Jamar Chase, but it's Jamar Chase adjacent. So just going to check that box for fantasy fans out there. Yes, in fact, something did happen to affect the person that everybody took number one overall. JJ McCarthy also out for a little while, 2 to 4 weeks with a high ankle sprain. That means we're going to see Carson Wentz against, coincidentally, the Bengals. JJ McCarthy had a rough week prior to coming out, the third lowest quarterback Sumer score in week 2. The lowest was Justin Fields, who is now in concussion protocol. We're keeping an eye on whether he's going to be available against the Buccaneers or if it will be Tyrod Taylor. Justin Fields, regrets I have a few. Did I get a little ahead of myself after last week by saying, yes, he can throw the ball? And then he came out and very much looked like maybe that was still up for debate.
It's the full distribution with Justin Fields. We get the game where it looks like he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. The offense is beautiful. The run is going well. And then when you kind of filtered it down and looked at what they were actually doing, they were running a lot more than expected. And you can't do that if you're having a poor game from your quarterback. And that's why it results in kind of a stomping out by a really good team, mind you. But the Buffalo Bills are probably one of the best teams of all time at this point, and they just haven't been able to make a Super Bowl with an all-time quarterback, a Hall of Fame quarterback leading the charge. So it's very difficult to get back in the game once you're down to the Bills. But all things considered, it definitely tempered our expectations going into week 3 and beyond.
Jaden Daniels just wrapping up the quarterback injuries, sprained knee, listed as day-to-day early in the week. So tracking that, Marcus Mariota would be the guy that would go in if he was unable to go. He was the 8th lowest scoring quarterback in SumerScore in week 2 in a really, really tough matchup against Green Bay. The one thing that is not shocking that I noticed there, one of the things that I thought about the Commanders, because, we were talking going into the season, a lot of talk about whether or not there would be regression there and whether or not we could trust what we saw out of the rookie season from Jane Daniels, or whether there would be a step back that he would take in his sophomore season, kind of similar to what we saw with CJ Stroud. People are getting smart and kind of not getting way ahead of themselves in that department. One of the things that I said over and over again that I was going to be looking for was whether or not Cliff Kingsbury built upon what he did at the end of the regular season last year in terms of getting a little bit more creative and just kind of, it felt like they just kept adding to the offense as the year went on, and that it got a little bit less predictable in terms of who was going to be where. I've made it clear on this show for a very long time that I'm somewhat obsessed in an unhealthy way with where Terry McLaurin lines up, and is it at left wide receiver all the time? Would you care to take a guess the rate at which he lined up at left wide receiver last week against Green Bay?
Has to be over 80%, right?
It's 86%. Like, what are we doing? Why, Cliff? Why? And by the way, it was on Prime Vision, which is the way that we should all be watching Thursday night games. I'm a huge fan. I love it. I love it. My husband does not, because the camera angles are super weird. But I love the fact that they identify so much for you. But I will say, for someone who has this weird obsession that I do with Terry McLaurin and where he lines up, that identification before the snap was not good for me, because all it did every single time they were lined up was go, here's where he is, here's where he is, here's where he is. And it was in the exact same spot every single time. So be looking to see again. Does it matter? Does it matter? Let me ask you that, because this is like a weird stat that now I'm always looking for. Do you think it matters that Cliff moves him around or not?
The reason typically in that system, of which Cliff Kingsbury is solidly in, the Mike Leach air raid system, which he was the quarterback of when it first went kind of gangbusters, and then he brought it to Texas A&M and then brought it back to Texas Tech, is typically the reason why you have those similar alignments is because of speed or tempo. And they weren't moving with a certain amount of speed or tempo until about the 3rd or 4th quarter. And so if that's the reasoning, fine, especially given you have a scrambling quarterback who right now sits around like 10% scramble rate, who is going to get out of the pocket. You want to move fast. You want to tire out the defensive line. Maybe that was their approach against the Packers defensive line, even though they just kept reloading and sending people from all over the field. They have a lot of talent on all 3 levels there. So it really threw the Commanders off. But especially when you have a very old wide receiver pass catching core, it does raise a couple flags. They were moving Debo all around the field, and they were moving Zach Ertz all around the field. So I guess there is some theory to it, but I'm just more generally concerned about their pass catching unit, because you can't just have Zach Ertz having every single target in a game against a premium opponent when you have that level of talent, Debo and Terry everywhere else, unless those players are starting to drop off. We saw a pretty good game from Debo as well, but it just felt like the combination of an older pass catching core with a young or replacement at the right guard position in particular, right side of the offensive line, was just not a recipe to succeed against a team that is operating at the level that the Packers are operating at week 2.
Yeah, I mean, and it's worth saying that the Packers are just good, right? And
Yeah.
so we don't wanna make too much of it with regards to the Commanders,
Right.
because if we'd done that a week ago with the Lions, if we'd thrown them out and said like, "Ah, God, maybe they're just not good this year," and then they turn around and they just stomp down the Bears. And so, there's obviously lots that we could take away from that game with regards to both the Bears and the Lions, but my main takeaway was like, "Holy crap, the Packers made them look like a team that was really struggling a week ago, and now they look dominant, and how good might the Packers actually be?"
It's really nuts that this team added Michael Parsons. I know we've said that virtually every week. I know we said it 5 minutes after Adam Schefter reported it, but their ability to weaponize the rest of their team because of Michael Parsons was, to a certain degree, the question mark, and they've been able to do it outrageously. At this point, we've talked about how Adrian Cooper was underrated. He's on the path to being an all-pro. Basically, every single linebacker statistic he's knocking out of the park, and he's being an effective pass rusher. Now we're seeing Nixon, the cornerback, be able to play really physical on the outside, knowing that after about 2 or 3 seconds, at least one of those guys is going to come free. And then pick a defensive lineman, Lindsay, because it's going to be a different one every single week, playing off of Michael Parsons and being able to get one-on-ones and win. Last week, it was Rashawn Gary. This week, it was Devontae Wyatt. We're probably going to see Lucas Van Ness be able to do it one week. And that is just an absolutely impeccable collection of talent. And I haven't even gotten to Xavier McKinney, who was basically an all-pro last year at the safety position. And they haven't even been forcing that many turnovers. So if you add in the turnover luck that they had last year to the level of talent and play-by-play success that they're generating this year, it just makes for an excellent defense. And it's interesting that a Matt LaFleur offense now has to raise its status, which they have in week 1 and week 2, to match the side of the ball that typically they have struggled on.
Former Packers quarterback Aaron Rodgers had a rough week, the second lowest quarterback Sumer score of the week for us. You know who was the highest?
Who was?
Russell Wilson.
He was slinging it, Lindsay. It looked
Mr.
like old school
Moonball
Russell
himself.
Wilson.
Yeah, it did. Until that last drive. And I got to tell you, like he almost just got, and I know we're just like ripping open a wound for our producer, Matt Stofsky, who's a huge Giants fan and is very sad still about that loss. It felt very like, okay, I'm getting a little worried. Like this has worked too much. Like now are we about to have a moment where it just tips and is like, I can't do it anymore. And then that moment did in fact come.
To a certain degree, that's what we saw with the Steelers last year, but it didn't feel the same.
Yeah.
This felt a measure of sustainable.
Did
You
it?
go,
Why?
you go and look at the wide receivers and the way that they were operating, and you see someone like Wan'Dale Robinson have an excellent yards per route run and an excellent target share. I think that is good. You see good pass blocking, particularly from Cam Scatteraboo, and he seems to be kind of the feature back now with Tyron Tracy also in the mix as well. The real question now becomes the offensive line, and Brian Daboll in his press conference seemed to be pretty complimentary of Marcus Mbau's replacement of James Hudson, who had inexplicably 4 penalties on the first drive, was taken out, and then they put in the rookie, and the rookie seems to have at least played up to standard for Brian Daboll. And so with all that coming together, I expect them to at least be able to win a couple games moving forward. I don't know if I'm expecting them to put up a bazillion points and Russ to have 455 yards and be able to drag the team despite a struggling other side of the ball. But I think there will be games where the pass rush will just get to the quarterback and the offense is going to be able to match the play of the defense. And that should lead to some good games for the Giants moving forward.
I was laughing as you were talking because I really wish we could do like a picture in picture here if we had if we were recording the camera that is currently on Matt Stofsky, because his reaction to some of those stats, particularly the 4 straight penalties on Hudson. Oh, we're just dragging him right back into it.
I don't think I've ever seen anything like that. And I've been watching and playing football for a long time, but it was just like he was trying to get penalties, which was interesting.
It was bizarre. Stopsky, do you have anything that you need to, or do you want to not, or? Nope, he's shaking his head. Okay, he
The,
doesn't
the
want to.
Cowboys have killed his spirit. And speaking of the Cowboys, the offense is there. I'd pray that Dak Prescott stays healthy, man. I'll pray. He looks so good and it's so fun. It's such a shame they got rid of Micah.
Yup. You brought up Cam Scatterbo here, and that made me think of just the rookie running backs in general. It's been an interesting year in that regard. But normally at this time of year, after week 1, week 2, we're all hitting the waiver wire, and there are a couple of guys that have sort of emerged. Other than Scatterbo actually getting more more carries than Tyron Tracy, and certainly popping onto our radar in that sense, and then JCM becoming RB1 after Eckler's Achilles tear, sad at the age of 30. We'll see if we see him back on the field again ever. Other than that, there haven't really been any guys that we didn't see coming.
It's really just Bill Krosky-Merritt and the rest of the field, and that even includes the veterans to a certain degree. Typically, we'll see a veteran pop out, but I think the real story here has been the kind of borderline running back performing well in a new system, and in particular, that is J.K. Dobbins, who injury has been his issue. We saw him be pretty effective for the Chargers last year and pretty effective with the Ravens. Injury has always been his issue, but Travis Etienne has been the other one who it seems like it's going to become a little bit more like the Buccaneers looked last year, where Bashal Tutin is involved and there's another rookie running back for you. But it's really grim if you are in need of a waiver wire running back right now. You're trying to just scrounge up maybe like 5 or 6 projected points at this point. I think Rachaad White, we will see continue to be involved in the Buccaneers offense randomly, even though he only has 12 rushes. He's been effective on those 12 rushes. And I think that's a sign that Grizzard at the Buccaneers is probably going to be another offensive coordinator for them somehow, some way. Todd Bowles is a guru at picking offense coordinators, but it's slim pickings out there for running backs. And in particular, we're not seeing a lot of the rookie running backs really get action other than maybe our Marion Hampton, who was not particularly efficient against the Raiders last night.
Yeah, and through 2 weeks is one of the lowest scoring running backs that we have. Just in terms of the rushing component, Ashton Genty also scoring much lower than I think we all would have expected. It really is an interesting year with regards to just the rookies in general, because, you have those couple names that we mentioned that I think are, I don't want to say surprising us, but, well, I mean, Bill Krosky-Merritt definitely is surprising us based on what we expected after the draft, right? But in terms of when we were drafting fantasy teams and stuff like that, this isn't a shock that he's massively in the mix. Scatterbo maybe becoming the main guy is surprising, but just in terms of just overall production, definitely the guys at the top. I was looking at the guys that we could possibly pick up off the waiver wire as surprises as not being there, but the guys at the top have not performed particularly well, or at least as well as we would have expected.
Right. And I think there's always, at least by week 2, a committee backfield that everyone decides to jump on. And the biggest one was the Jets. And we just haven't seen Braylon Allen get anything other than short yardage run. And maybe that'll change. But there's been a lot of those, this should be a committee backfield. Maybe this player outplay. Let's lean into, the variance. And hopefully he ends up being a running back 1 or 1.5 or something like that. We just haven't seen that really from any team either.
All right. As mentioned off the top of the show, big news over the weekend for a variety of reasons, including the president weighing in on them for some reason. The kickoffs, as you may have noticed, they do look different again, and the results have been different as well. Sam, what did the data tell us?
So the data has told us that the rate of returns of kickoffs has exploded basically to around 80%. And that number is really key because in recent years, we've only seen about half, or in the last 2 years, lower than half, really around a third of kickoffs actually being returned. That number was 80%, around 80% in 2006, 2007, 2008, 09, 10, those prime years of Devin Hester and all those excellent returners. And the issue just became that teams were simply declining to return. Now it is back up to that level, Lindsay.
Yeah, the issue became that they were declining to return after they
Exactly.
changed the rules, and you mentioned the prime years of Devin Hester. Unfortunately, it was also the prime years of concussions and speed collisions and things like that, so the league made a lot of changes around that time to increase safety on kickoffs, in particular, reduce those concussions, and since then, as you mentioned, the rate of returns was way, way, way down. So this tweak, the one that we've seen this year in kickoffs, was originally the brainchild of Sam Schwartzstein, who, if you watch Prime Vision for Thursday Night Football, as I already mentioned, as you should, he's the guy who pops up with the data updates. He's a former offensive lineman from Stanford. He played with Andrew Luck. He worked with Oliver Luck, Andrew's dad, at the XFL, and he came up with this idea as a way to make kickoffs better in that league. His goals were, I reached out to him yesterday, he told me a 90% return rate was the goal there, 29-yard average starting field position, same injury rate as scrimmage play, and under 5% touchdown rate. What he got was a 92% return rate, 29-yard average starting field position, and a 1% touchdown rate. Where have the NFL drives been starting, Sam, in the first 2 weeks in this format?
Those drives have been starting right around the 29. Right now it's about the 30, but it's right in that key range through week 2.
And how is that different from years past, or is it?
So last year it was about the same. And so the key problem, given that they did move to a more XFL style kickoff last year, the real problem last year was the rate of returns. But prior to that, it was basically a normal touchback. The 25 in those core years where they did move it to the 25, and then around the 2022 for those core years where we still weren't seeing a lot of returns and the touchback was at the 20. So it's basically increased 5 yards in the past 2 years over what we saw in recent old school kickoff, and then 10 yards as compared to the really old school kickoff.
The goal is clearly to get returns back in the game, as you have mentioned, while also making the game safer for the players, taking the built-up speed collisions out without also taking out their returns altogether. It looks like they're onto something with these changes. It also looks very different as a whole. At the very least, seeing the majority of players on the kick and the return teams lined up 5 yards apart from one another is a very big visual change. But that's not all. Shawn Syed joins us now, having watched the tape and also studying this issue for the last couple of years. Strategies are different. Execution is different. What that you have seen, Shawn, have felt like the biggest changes so far?
Lindsay, the biggest thing to me is you're actually getting some teams try this kind of low line drive or knuckleball type kick where the ball is landing behind that 20-yard line but bouncing in front of the returner. And when I looked at the XFL kickoff, did that whole study, one of the things that stuck out to me right away was there were all of these really, really specific rules that you could tell someone put them in for a reason. Like, I don't remember them fully exactly, but like if the ball hit the ground, you had to wait like 3 seconds before the kick coverage team can go. And it's like, all right, well, why do you do that? Or that like hyper extreme penalties for if the ball gets kicked in front of that landing zone area from the 20-yard line back to the goal line. Those rules were specifically put in place to stop that line drive kick. So my mind immediately went to, okay, I need to see teams at least try this. And when you see it, you get good results.
Because those same rules are not in play in the NFL. So it's like
Exactly.
totally fair game from an advantage standpoint. What is the advantage of doing that line drive kick, Shawn?
So a few things, right? If you just kick the ball in the air and say a player catches it at the 5-yard line, once that returner catches it, then your kickoff coverage unit can go. If the ball hits the 15-yard line and takes, I don't know, maybe a second for the ball to get to the returner, maybe the returner's fumbling around just a little bit and now they get going downhill, your kickoff coverage unit can leave the second the ball hits in that area. So now it's like you're reestablishing the line of scrimmage. Like you are pushing 10 yards further back. Like if I could ask you, would you rather have a situation where your kickoff coverage unit had to line up 10 yards further back or 10 yards closer to the returner? Of course, you're going to choose 10 yards closer to the returner. It is a huge positive aspect. And I mean, you see little funky things, whether it's the ball hits kind of weird, it goes over the Steelers returner's head, it ends up in a touchdown for the Seahawks. That is, of course, I would expect an extreme example, but situations where the ball hits in bounds and goes out of the back of the end zone. Now we're getting that specific type of touchback only to the 20-yard line. You're getting an Eagles example in week 1 against the Cowboys, where you're trying to find a way to neutralize a really good returner. I think it was Turpin, right? He kind of bobbles it just a touch, and then the Eagles are able to stop him further back. Like when we used to look at some win probability models before these new rules, literally you could bake in if your team was not kicking a touchback, you are hurting your team because of the kind of right tail potential outcome of a long return. At this point, to me, if you're looking at it and saying, hey, we could gain like 10 yards per return, 50 yards over the course of a game, 5 first downs, like that is actual points on the board, like that you are potentially taking away from a team. So we've definitely seen some teams try it. That's the first thing that stood out to me, Lindsay. You asked me a simple question. I had to go on a long rant because I need more teams to continue to do it. We have seen a bunch of teams try it. A bunch of teams maybe do it like kind of by accident, or teams like you end up kicking it short and you say, hey, let me just not try this again. To me, it's like pretty clear proof of concept. I know that you guys are going to talk to a kicker. So it's like, all right, well, what does that mean for the kicker? Obviously, field goals are so valuable. I don't want to change up the way that you've been kicking a ball for your entire life, but let's try this out. Like if you're a college kicker and you're maybe not going to be in the pros, find something funky to do here where maybe you can earn yourself a roster spot.
So, Shawn, I just want to delicately outline exactly what you're talking about, because in the old days, we used to have the squib kicks, and you mentioned the knuckleball kick. The line drive is what Sam Schwartzstein calls it. Exactly what must be executed to reap that benefit?
Great question. So I think that, well, by rule, the ball has to land inside the 20-yard line. That is like by rule. If you kick it in front of the 20-yard line, now you get that penalty. I believe the ball goes to the 40-yard line, which it's only 5 yards further than a touchback. So now your actual penalty is a little bit smaller. In the XFL, if I remember correctly, that penalty was larger. So that is the first thing. So you're going to see kickers take a little bit of a shorter run up. I feel like I may remember this where you're seeing kickers kind of, instead of just having the ball kind of straight towards the end zone, like they're turning it a little bit. So you're trying to get some sort of funky spin. I do think having a little bit of control there is a positive aspect. So it is a lot on the kicker. Like that is very much like, I'm not a kicker, so I'm not going to pretend to know it, but I feel like I've seen enough kickers do it now over the course of the preseason, over the course of the first 2 weeks of this season, even like the Dolphins doing it in the preseason last year. It absolutely can be done. So it feels like we're not at like the peak of everyone getting to that level yet. But if we had this same rules set in place for 5 years, if like more than half the teams didn't try this at one point or another, I would probably be pretty surprised.
And for an abundance of clarity, it needs to bounce in the landing zone and then not go out of bounds. And it's going to sit there for a second or two. Meanwhile, the teams are flying up, and that is the true benefit as compared to the 3-second rule that the XFL said, correct?
Exactly, right? You know, some people say 3-second rule when you drop food on the floor. That's not for me. This is going to be a different one, certainly. So the ball has to hit inside the landing zone. It can't go out of bounds before the goal line. But if it bounces inside the 20 and goes outside the end zone, you're at a 20-yard touchback, which that is an awesome outcome. Like that is a really, really good outcome. So yes, you are absolutely risking something if you're kicking it like hard to the corners. Maybe that ball is going to bounce out of bounds. But like you mentioned, once that ball hits inside that landing zone, kickoff coverage unit is flying down the field. And as that ball, you know, if it's a 50-50 situation where you're a returner and you're not sure, should I pick it up? Is the ball going to die? Sam, you know, I mean, a football is a weird shape. Like it's hard to predict where the heck that thing is going to bounce. So if you're a returner, now you're playing shortstop, that might make you a little bit nervous while you have 10 guys just chasing you down the field.
So one final follow-up here, Shawn, because you mentioned something that has to be mentioned again. There is a minor touchback here. You, in theory, could get a touchback that only goes to the 20. But Shawn, I just said that the average return right now is going to the 29-30. So there's some juice left to be had, is there not?
Absolutely. Sam, like I said, what if I told you that every single drive that an NFL team had to take was one extra first down? Like how many third downs do we get where a defensive coordinator is dialing up some sweet blitz? Like they're absolutely that outcome. And I don't want to pretend that we're going to get to a point where it is a 100% perfect line drive kick rate. We're getting that like absolutely out of bounds, exactly where it needs to be every time. It doesn't have to be like that though. Like there is enough margin for error where, hey, it lands in bounds and there's going to be times where you skip it and it goes straight to the returner. Even then, you're able to leave that line just a little bit earlier. So there is absolutely a lot of juice left to squeeze out of this one.
Several things. One, is it 3-second rule or 5-second rule for dropped food?
Lindsay, to me personally, like I feel like that is, that is a personal like rule. Like it feels like these NFL rules, they are more like, hey, these are set. I'm not going to judge a team for not actually maybe a little bit, if you're not at least thinking about trying it. But if you're dropping food, I mean that's on you, Lindsay. That's your own risk tolerance. Much like as a special teams coordinator trying to decide, do I risk this potential penalty on this little line drive kick?
I know I'm from the South, but like sometimes you just got to like look around a little bit, see if anybody saw.
Well, Sam, that's a great example here because you have to look around, like what else is happening in the league? Because I don't think you can say that no one else is doing it. Now, Sam, you in your food drop situation, maybe you can say no one else is doing it, but here we have proof of concept. These high level kickers,
and we will judge you,
can do this.
Same as the food on the ground. We're going to judge you. In this case,
I mean,
if you don't try these new things,
because it is hard. Or I have to imagine it's hard. I'm really curious to listen back to this conversation when you guys talk to a special teams coordinator, talk to a kicker. Like maybe they just say, "Hey, this Shawn kid thinks it's way too easy. It's really, really hard." And I'm open to that. I'm seeing like 6 to 8 kickers do it quite well, so I would like to see more continue to try.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
But that's only if you want to like prevent your opponent from scoring points and put yourself in a better situation. That's like only if that's what you want as an outcome.
When you say, and for sure there are teams that are like, I don't want that at all, Shawn.
I mean, practice time is limited, Lindsay, just like the food on the floor.
These are all good things for us to talk to Kevin and Matt about. But you said, what, 6 to 8 kickers that are doing it well, or teams that are doing it well? Who are some of the names that, and I know you haven't done like a deep dive with specific data or anything like that, but just anecdotally, who are some of the teams that you have noticed trying this?
So part of this is fun because like I'll watch it and I'll think about it. I'll be like, is that intentional or is it not intentional or is it kind of just happening on accident? So like I've seen like the Ravens, I think they were pretty intentional about it because then they had a penalty and they stopped. I saw the Eagles do it in week 1, but it felt like they were trying to just push the ball away from the returner. If I remember correctly, the Jets did it. The Rams did it. Like some of these teams that are like known as teams that are investing heavily in analytics, of course, like the Panthers did in the preseason. Like, I mean, I've talked to like data people on teams who I know that they've bought the data to their special teams coaches. And then it becomes a conversation of like, okay, well, this is our limited amount of practice time. This is what our kicker is comfortable with. This is what our head coach is comfortable with. So it's a very interesting push-pull where like, I mean, I love the era that we're in, but if I could like really quickly just press fast forward 3 years, I would be curious to see how much it explodes because like, I'm not going to volunteer myself to do another like year-long study, especially Lindsay. I mean, I did like 400 XFL kickoffs. It's like 150 NFL kickoffs every week. Do I do the full 1,000? I don't know. That's a conversation for a future day. But there could be a look at, well, let me look at every single kick where a ball bounced in front of a returner. What are the results there? If that result is like way past what I would expect to be that 29, 30-yard line kind of average return, I would be flabbergasted. Like I would be, it wouldn't make any sense to me at all. So, maybe I do that. We'll see. We'll see if I can make it through that in the summer.
Again, anecdotally, there are teams that are not trying this, right? Like we've seen teams consistently just kick off like normal.
Yeah, and I don't want to speak fully to like this specific team. It also feels like there's times where you have like these kickers, like these guys have juice. Like these guys can kick the ball far, so it feels like sometimes they're almost trying to like bring themselves back in a little bit, but they still are like kicking it too far, and it ends up going as a touchback. So I remember last year, for example, like the Rams, they were very much like, look, it does not make incentive sense for us to not kick a touchback. So they were just kicking the ball out of the back of the end zone every single time. And I was like, I'm not happy with that because I did a lot of work and was hoping for a little bit of a different result specifically. But the way the rules were set up, it absolutely made sense for that to be your strategic approach. And now it makes certainly a lot less sense. So it's fun to see like a team like the Rams not say, okay, I'm just going to keep on. Like you could set the touchback at my own 20 and I'm still going to do it. Like they obviously saw that, like had the data, understood that, and now they're taking a different approach on it.
If you had to guess based on what you've seen so far, and I know that you've already alluded to the fact that this might actually take like 3 years or, there might be a longer shelf life that we need to give teams to adjust for various reasons. But if you had to guess based on what you've seen so far, what you know about optimizing this situation, what do you think this looks like by the end of the year?
I think that we start to see a little bit more creativity in terms of maybe blocking overall. That's a situation where it feels like teams are taking kind of different approaches, but no one is getting like super duper spicy. Like when I charted it in the XFL, one of the first things I looked at was, well, if you're the return unit, you have to kind of start at a certain line. You're kind of tied to that line. Were you dropping far back, or were you kind of like fighting right away? And so like some teams, I think it's like the Bills, like they're doing it right away. Like they're trying to get in your face, but then a team like the Panthers are dropping back. I think that drop back will probably sort of get eliminated. I do think people are overall going to end up probably liking this because you have situations like the Patriots kick return touchdown, right? Like when everyone was kicking a touchback, you don't get that. Or on Thursday night, like Debo has a really nice kick return where this is a run play at a certain point, right? Like you are absolutely turning into that. Can you find a hole in the defense? Like for me personally, the main reason I was excited about it was because more players in the NFL like can find a way to get a paycheck. Like your time in the NFL is usually so limited. It is so hard to get there. For you to potentially like make your name in this specific type of situation, like Tank Bigsby, for example, gets traded to the Eagles. Of course, I think he's going to get carries in Philadelphia, and he, of course, is going to want to be a running back. But immediately they throw him in on kick return, right? Like they're not just saying, hey, this guy can only have a career as a kick returner. He can absolutely get carries in the NFL and be productive. But I think there's going to be more players that become experts in that type of way. And I mean, Sam's giving me like an 80% kick return rate. Like this is a play that you have to worry about all of the time. So if we're not going to be in a world where you just cut the kickoff as a whole and just say, hey, let's just go ahead and give the ball to the other team at a certain yard line and let's just go ahead and play offense, defense. You're now opening it up to more teams to have players on their roster that are good at a specific thing, which that makes me happy because the players' lives are so hard anyway. And I don't think we're going to get to a high percentage of line drive kicks by the end of this season. I would say maybe 2 years down the line where we just need to get a bunch of kickers that are really good at it, that they're just like getting beautiful examples. We make enough podcasts about it. We make enough videos about it. And then every coordinator is trying to do it.
Good stuff, Shawn. Thank you. All right, we've teased it enough. Let's welcome a couple of new voices to this conversation. Two guys with lots of experience on kickoffs and with each other. We just found out 5 years together in Cleveland. We're welcoming to the show our colleague here at SumerSports, Kevin Spencer, who coached in the league for 26 years, was a special teams coordinator for a good majority of that. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Lindsay. Nice to meet you all. And it was what a pleasure. I mean, obviously met Sam and then this guy, Stover.
The Stover in question, of course, is Matt Stover, who you are very familiar with from a long time in the league. Was not only the Ravens' inaugural kicker after spending that time in Cleveland that I alluded to, but fun fact, for a stretch, the year the Ravens won the Super Bowl in 2000, Sam, I don't know if you know this, he scored every single one of their points for 5 straight games because their offense did not score a single point.
He was a weapon back then because it
What?
didn't score. He was.
49 consecutive points. That's one record, Kevin, I don't think anybody's going to break. It's pretty cool.
Hey, Lindsay, I got to say, for guys that go to college in Louisiana, special things can be done.
That's right. Did you go to LSU? Where'd you go?
I went to Tulane.
Oh, Tulane. I got you. Yeah, down in New Orleans. Gotcha. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Matt Stover, 6th all-time in the NFL in scoring in the Ravens Ring of Honor. Thank you so much for being here too, Matt.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
When I reached out to you yesterday and asked if you had thoughts on the new kickoff, you said, you bet. I bet you have a lot. What stands out to you the most?
You know, out of my observation, and as I looked at the Ravens game, I was at the game this past weekend. When I'm looking around the league, you know, let's remember the history of the entire play has changed because 75% of the concussions that were happening during the course of a season happened on that one play. And Kevin will tell you, back in the day, it was wedge busters. It was Benny Thompson running full blast, and his job was to break it up. It's a long space between, you know, the returner and the coverage team, and you're covering with 275-pound guys sometimes running 4.5s. It's just an accident waiting to happen. So, of course, they shorten it up. And last year was, I believe, a point in 2024 was to gather the data. If you look back at any return and the returner, when he gets the ball in his hands and he takes his first step, where is the team? The coverage team. And that's the critical point on any coverage team. So whatever you do with the kick, the longer it takes for them to get the ball in their hand and then take that first step gives the team more room to cover. That's the critical piece to what they're starting to figure out. And remember, if you squib kick a ball and it goes past on 20 or past the 20 and it goes in the end zone, it's a 20, it goes back to the 20-yard line. Let's also remember that points scored are very prevalent. And Kevin, you remember this with Belichick used to get on me when I didn't have a good kickoff. If they started the ball at the 28-yard line, they had a 40 or 50% more chance of scoring points because of that field position than they did if they started at the 20. So it comes down to a few things. It comes down to the field position. It comes down to how can they cover, where are they when the ball is caught and the first step is taken, and then where's field position after the point of the play. And that all refers to the field position and points and all that. So if I'm a kicker, I always had a really good squib type of directional kick where I could line it, 40, 50 yards, and it's going to hit the ground. And then with that, it's called a dirty ball. They're calling it a dirty ball right now. And if the dirty ball's flying and it's going everywhere, Kevin will tell you that's tough. And especially for not necessarily the returner as much as it is for the line right in front of them. And you really don't want those guys to touch it. You want your returner to catch it. But that's where I would say I would master directional kick dirty balls. I think what's going to happen too, you're going to have some going out of bounds more than normal because you're going to directional kick away from the returner. And you want that ball down on the ground past the 20, and maybe it skips in, maybe it doesn't. The wetter the field is, the more it's going to skip. It's going to be a lot harder to return. But that's my analysis. That's what I would say I would do. Get the ball down, make it hit the ground. Don't let them catch it cleanly, and then let your coverage team cover further down the field.
Kevin, does that all align with your thoughts as well?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense because as we talked to earlier about this, ball security is paramount. So if you're putting the ball on the ground, and the minute the guys make a play on the ball, now it's a tough ball to handle with the kick that's Matt is referring to. And it is going to destroy, drop angles that guys take relative to trying to block a point of attack. So I think it's an advantageous kick. And because once it's in the 20, and to Matt's point, if it rolls all the way in the end zone, it's a touchback. And now offense is starting on the 20-yard line. And I think you are going to have some problems with guys handling the ball. I think thus far they've only had 19 kicks out of bounds in the first 2 weeks. So I think even if you can get that dirty ball between the hash and the top of the numbers, I still think it's going to be referred to as a directional kick. And I think it's going to take, once the guy gets his hands on it, then it's all hell breaks loose. That's when the cover guys can take off. So at first I thought it was mishits, but I've seen too much of the film. It's not mishits. They're trying to do this.
The ball's going into the end zone in the air, right? And it lands in it's an automatic touchback, goes 35. And the likelihood of them, even if they don't score, they're going to have a pooch kick, pooch punt. And that is from a field position, and you got a good defense. That's what you want. So you really want that ball to be inside that 25-yard line as much as you can. And the critical piece is how do you disrupt that, and how do you allow your coverage team to get further down the field? Because Kevin knows every yard matters, right? And these guys are flying. They are so fast.
I love this breakdown from y'all, fellows, because it's showing the amount of thought process that goes into the special teams game. And so I want to start with Matt here. At what point in the offseason, now that you know these rules are engaged and you've received the information about how perhaps you should approach it, there's a real technique application. When do you start working on that dirty ball as, a wedge in your golf bag there? And does that change over the course of the year?
It's basically a shank. You're really coming across the ball. Here's what can happen too. You miss hit a little bit. You're kicking into the wind and it lands on the 21. Right now, the ball's coming out to the 35. Right, Kevin? Isn't it the 35?
Actually, if it does come out to the 35, and 35. To your point earlier, it's amazing. Offensive coordinators salivate when they think they could get the ball at the 35-yard line. And actually, I just checked it. The starting point after 2 weeks is the 29.9-yard line. So that's still giving people issues. Defensive coordinators are not happy about this rule and now the strategy that coaches are using that Matt's been talking about.
It comes down to points, right, guys? It really does. It comes down to field position and points, and it safened up the game. They had to do something with the play. They did. When CT came out and the collisions and the force of that collision on that sport. So I was a proponent for changing it because Kevin too, we saw guys on Monday mornings and they were beat up. And, Benny Thompson, you'll never forget, walking off sideways off the field after wedge busting. And the strategy, Sam, you said it. There is a lot of time. It's a third of the game, special teams is. Field position is critical. We won a Super Bowl in 2000 with the Baltimore Ravens because of our extremely strong defense. We had a punter that led the league inside the 20s. And we played the chess game all day, and Trent Dilfer's job was not to turn the ball over and just get 3, right? So that's what ended up happening with me and how I was brought into that team. And, I was a really good kicker at the time. And so, it's a chess game during the course, and the teams that have the better positive field position, especially on starting on kickoffs, it matters without question.
You've a few times referred to it as a shank, right? Like it's a purposeful shank. How hard is it to purposefully shank a ball well?
If you're an athlete, which these kickers today are really good athletes, I mean, they're just not soccer players. They play baseball, basketball, football. You can do it. I mean, you could put, and Kevin, you can attribute to this. If there was a guy that was lined up right in front of me and he was 11 yards away from me kicking, Scotty O'Brien would say, hit him, right? Scotty was my special teams coach because I had the ability to hit it so hard at knuckler right at him. He wouldn't have time to duck. It's going to hit him. And we did that on a few occasions, and I hit him. And of course, Belichick lost his mind when I did it. What are you doing? But we ended up getting it. So my ability to knuckle it properly, I'm a pro. That's what you do. You gotta execute it. Field conditions do matter. Weather conditions matter. Those will play a part. There are those mental mistakes that you make, and you kick one out of bounds, and you get blessed out on the sideline when you come over there. But overall, these guys are really good athletes. The ball, and Kevin will tell you this too. The ball today is a nice football, and it is. I'm not going to tell you easier to kick because whatever, but it is a good pliable football to where it makes it easier to place, put your foot around it, and get it where you want it to go.
So this is not an adjustment, just to be very clear. It feels like you're discussing this as something that kickers will be able to adjust to without like messing up their kicking motion or anything like that. Just because we haven't traditionally seen them do this a lot doesn't mean that they can't do this well right away.
If you don't care if the ball goes in the end zone or not, so now you're not trying to kick it 75 yards in the air with high. You're just trying to knuckle it in a shot. I mean, it makes that play easier, I believe, for the kicker because the 75-yard blast in the end zone, is a lot more difficult than you telling me to knuckle one. Now, if you're telling me to directional knuckle one, it becomes harder, right, Kevin? I mean, because it's easy to miss-hit one and it goes out of bounds.
Yeah, I think you're going to find that most of those kind of kicks, Matt, tell me if I'm wrong, it's probably going to be between the hash marks. Because even when it hits the ground, you might get movement left or right that, in essence, it may end up as a directional. And how do you position your returners to field that kind of ball? You have no idea where it's going to go.
It really caught my attention, Matt, that you said it's a little easier for the kicker as compared to like the big booming 75-yard kick. Because I know y'all probably watched the Vikings-Bears game, fellas, where that was a problem. They were trying to take advantage of the rules. Cairo Santos, Tulane guy, goes to kick it out the back of the end zone, and everyone's criticizing him, saying, you've kicked it out the back of the end zone for years, and now you have the hard task of knuckling it, and you're unable to kick it out the back of the end zone. But it's really interesting to hear you say that, Matt, that it's actually, the direction, maybe it's a little bit more skill-based, but you're not trying, full blast, full driver after it to try to pump it deep through the wind.
It can be hard. It can be easy. Right. It depends on the athlete. That's why I brought up him being an athlete first. That really does come down to that. And like you move the ball back to the 33-yard line, a 33-yard field goal on extra points. Instead of it being a 2-foot putt, it's a 4-foot putt. Now it's a 92% success rate. Same thing in golf, right? And how easy any golfer can miss a 4-foot putt. It's very easy to miss a 32-yard, 33-yard field goal. I've done it. 20 yards, a lot of things have to go wrong for you to miss a 20-yard field goal. It's the same thing here. I believe that, Kevin's saying in between the hash marks, that's only about 20 feet wide. If you go between the numbers in the hash, you got another 15 yards to work with. I think you're going to see more of that, Kevin. Outside the numbers, that's going to take some guts. If that happens, it's going to be a pop-up landing, in between the numbers and the sideline where he's going to have to receive the ball in the air.
To your point, I think they don't want to have that ball starting on the 40-yard line, so they're probably going to do at absolute worst in between the hashes, and then maybe move it out between the top of the numbers and the hash mark, and you're still going to you have a little bit of a play right there with the ball not getting too close to the sideline.
Yep.
And you're still going to have difficulty fielding the ball. That's the big thing.
Because they're going to be practicing it more, right, Kevin? But I mean, the returner, it's so easy. They're so jacked up. They're so tight out there, and the ball's bouncing around, and those guys are on you so fast that they're going to be panicking, and there's going to be you're going to see some 27-yard line, 25-yard line starting points, where the coverage team gets to before that ball that is ever made one move forward. And if that happens, you're going to see inside the 20 type of tackles and stuff.
So many follow-up questions here for Kevin. You mentioned practice time. How does this change the practice time that you're allocating for something like this as compared to in the last few years when you're seeing a high rate of touchbacks, how much time you would spend practicing kickoffs versus what do you think you have to allocate to that now?
And Matt knows how this works is that you might have 2 8-minute periods within a practice, but that core, the holder, the punter and the kicker, they have a ton of time on practicing on their own, so they can be off in another field, and it's Matt working on this skill. Matt has to maybe go to a 2-step approach, take something off the ball, and then he's going to play around with how he strikes the ball. So I don't think it's going to create any problems at all because these guys are, to Matt's point, they're very, very talented athletes, and they've been doing this for since they were little kids, and for some of them, they just get off in another field and they're just going to work on it, and they'll play around with it, and they're going to come to the coach and say, hey, guess what I found out today? And then you practice that within the session, and the guys still have to, they still have to cover their lanes, they still have to take on blocks. So it's really, I think it's going to be an optimum thing. There's going to be some, and they're just now starting to discover this is the way to go because, hang time's not a relevant point anymore. Trying to drop the ball between the goal line and the 5 is wicked difficult. I just watched the game from Denver where the kicker obviously forgot about altitude. He probably went with a 2-step approach, and then it's 7 yards deep. So I don't think it's going to be a big deal, and I think these guys are going to come up with some very unique things.
What about the return team, though? Because it feels like it is more challenging for the return team. Do you need to spend more time on that at practice?
Yeah, I don't know how you can't cover, I think, all the variables that could come up. I think you're probably going to have to spend time with your returners either pre or post practice, just drilling some balls down the field. And it's like a shortstop taking infield practice. I think that's because the ball is never going to bounce the same way twice, but they're not going to get a clean ball to hit anymore if everybody – and how it is in coaching, and Matt will tell you this, coaches are great copycats. They'll have everybody doing this, and so it's going to be – I think you're just going to have to go back there and rep your returners, and hopefully they get it's still going to be a bit of a unknown quantity come game day.
Well, Kevin was coaching back in the day, too, where there was actual return blocking scheme, where you had time to set. There's no time to set now. It's man on man. I've got this guy, you got this guy. And so the drop back is less, right? And the scheme on the blocking is less. So they're not changing whom they're blocking based on where the ball went. They've got their guy. And so I think that it's just, what team can block the best and have a great returner to be able to at least set it up, right? So, I mean, that's my opinion, Kevin. I don't know if I'm...
No, you're exactly right. And I think it's going to pose an even greater, you might say, hey, guys, we're going to stretch this return to the right. So the guys are going to take the appropriate drop angles to get position on the right. But then you start to do that, but then the ball veered to the left because it hit the ground at the 15, And now all of a sudden you're dropping to the right, and return guys are going to, their eyeballs are on the football. Therefore, that's where the returners are. So there's going to be a lot of, mishits, and it's going to be a problem for the up front guys because, to Matt's point, they're about 5 yards of separation. Many of the guys are jumping their guys right away because you don't want to give them any type of, pickup speed to go. And now they're going to be whiffing and blocking air.
True, and I can disguise where I'm going too. That returner's trying to look at my angle. Now I'm only 2-3 yards from the ball, maybe 4. I can totally disguise where I'm going, where he thinks I'm going left and I'm going to go right. I'm just throwing his whole game off. So there's really no way to call a return. Back in the day, you would always see the returner checking you out and how you're walking off when he does this or when he sets his ball up. There's all these keys that you can try to take as a returner. I think that's gone, right, Kevin?
Oh, no doubt. I mean, and you know how it is, Matt. Within 3 steps, you can show that you're going to go right, and you can run around, and next thing you know, the ball is going left, and it's bouncing around on the 8-yard line. So it really is going to put a tough deal on the guys up front blocking, and no doubt the returners just trying to get their hands on the ball. And there's going to be some openings now for guys to make plays.
I'm really interested in those differences between the kickoff team and the interaction between the kickoff team and kickoff return team. You mentioned how you used a setup and a return. That also seems like it'll change the personnel that will be used. We mentioned wedge busters a couple times. Kevin, what do you think the future of a kickoff team guy or a kickoff return team guy looks like? Are those going to be more DB type players who are used to playing in space and playing in coverage, playing, pressed up, or is it still going to maintain kind of the linebacker, bigger bodies?
No, I think that you're going to see more skill on skill type of situation. But Sam, what comes into play is you've got 53-man roster, you've got 48 guys. You're not going to have a plethora of wide receiver and DB types. You might dress 7 DBs, maybe you have 5 wide receivers. So you're still going to be relying upon athletic linebackers. You're going to see tight ends out there. I mean, hell, here in Cleveland, we use defensive linemen to cover kicks now. So, but it's because of you don't have a 90-man roster like they do in college, and you can really set up your personnel because you have a plethora of those guys. So, to your point, I think you can survive now with a DB wide receiver type guy blocking and covering. But you're still going to have to use the other guys because you simply don't have enough guys to get it done because of game day rosters and who's eligible and who's not eligible.
And then the next personnel question comes up is, how do you change who the returner is, given that this has become such a difficult skill that also is substantially different now that you're running new returns?
You have to have guys that can handle the ball, so you could potentially have a punt returner, obviously a running back, but Matt knows when that ball hits the ground, you could be Brooks. Well, I'm going to say Brooks Robinson, and no one's going to know who the hell that is, but he was the hell of a third baseman that played with the Baltimore Orioles. But I'm dating myself greatly. But, you still don't know where the heck the ball is going to go. And then we're talking about balls hit on turf where they might skitter a little bit more. You're going to have some grass fields, and Coach Belichick used to let the grass grow long to try and slow down opponents. So you have no idea what the variables are going to be. So I don't care who you have back there. It's going to be a problem. You could have the greatest athlete in the world, and I'm trying to come up with you could have Derek Jeter back there, and he'd have a hell of a time fielding that ball. Now, I know you know who Jeter is, Brooks Robinson. I thought Matt knew that because he's a Baltimore guy.
Yeah.
So.
Well, what's crazy about the field conditions, too, he's not wrong. Somehow Cleveland's field was always a quagmire. Right, Kevin? I don't know how that happened, but somehow that sprinkler system stayed on all night.
I'll tell you how it happened. Bill Belichick told the guys, don't cut the grass and put a lot of water on it because we're playing the Houston Oilers and they've got that run and shoot offense. We have to slow those guys down. Now, it made us incredibly more slow, but Bill was more about let's slow down the speed guys.
And then they had the old baseball field in the middle. It was crazy. So the point of that, too, if the field conditions are bad, which they won't be in the NFL because there is a quality of field conditions now that's based on, all the new rules, good for the kicker. But and so the consistency of the ball flight and how it hits should be better. But if it's wet, it's going to create havoc. And that's when I think that you start watching those games, that ball's going to hit. It's going to skip a lot faster, a lot harder. And you're going to see some, messed up, returns on that.
How much of a priority will be placed on that returner? Like in terms of, there's already, in terms of maintaining a roster spot, priority placed on your ability to contribute on special teams. But typically, if you are more of like a borderline player, I'm wondering if this being a high variance play where it's essentially a first down, or the difference between a first down or not a first down, if you're actually picking up valuable yards on this type of a play, are we going to see players that kind of match that on the field more frequently, at least in the returner position?
I still think you're going to need to have guys back there especially the way it is now, because it's a one cut and go type of thing. And if you've got some guy with some straight line speed, he can stick his foot in the dirt and go. I still think you're not going to want to have, and here I go, Mac and related. You're not going to have an Eric Metcalf, because Eric could make you miss in a phone booth. But now I think, because now they have to defend 53 and a third, and you're going to have some spacing in there. I think you want to have a guy who can hit it quick. So I still think you're going to have that type of returner. I don't think you're going to have the jitterbug type of thing, change of directions, one cut and go, and then you have a guy who's the top speed right now. Because once you get through everybody's on the same plane. In the old days, you had levels, different speeds, and you had safeties. Now it's, in essence, everybody's defending the thing with a 10 or 15-yard area. And if you get a seam, it could be out the gate.
So let me ask you a question, Kevin. Is it the size of the returner, like a Josh Cribbs, right? The dude ran right over me. I mean, when he hit me, I went, dude, and I watched him go by. That was a big guy, but then I'm hitting an Eric Metcalf at 185, 190 pounds. It was so what are they going to go with? Are they going to go with a 210-pound, 220? What do you think they're going to be doing that?
I still think it's going to come down to, how quickly can you run? If you have a guy like Cribbs, or I'm blanking on the name of the young man that he finished up his career at Pittsburgh, and he was a tall
Cordell Patterson.
Now Cordell Patterson would really enjoy this type of concept, because he had great straight line speed. He was not a wiggle guy. He stuck his foot in the dirt and went. And then, like Matt's saying, now he's going to be in your face. It's going to be difficult to bring down a man that big moving that fast. So I think that in my mind, that's the kind of guys you're looking for, guys that can hit it. And you're going to get a crack. And if you get through the crack, you're out.
Lizzie, I think it has a lot to do with size. I honestly do. You get a big guy back there. They're running 4.6, Kevin, I guess 4.5. That you can find some guys in the 220s doing that, right?
You're right, dude. It's a different athlete, even in your time, and not like you got a little bit of gray hair, but not a hell of a lot. but even back when you were playing, there were some guys that could giddy up and go. So if you have a big guy that can bring it, that's going to be a weapon to utilize. But you're still going to have to fill the ball, and it's going to be kind of a sketchy kick. So that could negate a lot of that as well.
That's right.
It's all about ball security. You got to take care of the football come heck or high water.
Yep. Kevin, you said earlier that defensive coordinators are not going to be enjoying, or are not enjoying, this twist in terms of what it does to their unit. I would imagine that this is a welcome change for special teams coordinators, who finally kind of get to show off what they can do.
Well, yeah, because I think that, I think we talked about this earlier at another time. They're really for I don't know how many years there were 6 phases of the kicking game. You have your kickoff, return, punt, return, field goal, block. And for how many years, really, you're only coaching 4 of them, because everything was a touchback. Now, you still have to practice a return. You have to practice coverage. But now I feel a lot better about the longevity of coaches, because they truly are earning their paycheck now, because they have to coach 6 phases. And these are important phases. And when they move that touchback deal to the 35-yard line, coordinators are not happy about it, because Matt already said it. You get 1 first down, the ball's in midfield. You have great punters now, rugby-style guys. The ball's going to be inside the 10-yard line in a New York minute, and now your defense is going to be extremely pleased about that.
So as y'all are discussing this, there's so many different interplays here, and the unique thing that I'm finding is that this has to become a coaching point. And I know y'all have both mentioned Coach Belichick many different times. As a head coach, or is y'all's expectation that the guys like Harbaugh, who we have seen take advantage of this in the last 2 weeks, Matt, I know you mentioned you had played a year with Harbaugh, Do you think that that type of head coach will be considered more because, like Lindsay said, this is basically a 10 to 15 yard difference per kickoff, per score on each play? Do you think that the special teams kind of mentality is going to take hold amongst head coaches a little bit more, or do you think that the special teams coordinator will handle most of that? I'll start with Kevin on that one.
Well, I still think, I think sometimes coaches play, or maybe, I'm just going to say it, they play lip service to that. They say, hey, there's 3 phases. All 3 phases are wicked important. But let's be honest, the only time some head coaches care about the kicking game is Sunday or Monday when they have to face the press and we lost the game because we had a bad day in the kicking game. But you do have some coaches out there, and we talk about Coach Belichick, Coach Harbaugh, Mike Vrabel is all part of that lineage. He gets it. I think that you still have to have a head coach that's going to give you the proper amount of time, is going to have some, when you're picking that bottom 6 spots of the 53, that maybe there are people that can help you in the kicking game. And who's going to be active on game day now? So if you're going to have to put your money where your mouth is as a head coach now, because they're now defending all 6 phases of the kicking game. And this kickoff return is like I said, right now, the average return is at 29.9 yard line, and it's only going to get better. So you're going to have to, if you're earning your paycheck as the head coach, you better put some credence to helping out your special teams coach, because the special teams coordinator is only as good as the head coach believes in what they're trying to get done. And that's the important thing.
Yeah, I've had to fight for a few special teams coaches, Gary Zahner being one, Kevin, and Russ Purnell, and for time on the field. There were many times they weren't giving me time to kick field goals in a team, and I need those reps with a team. I need to get my juices going, and I had to, kind of negotiate and go to the head coach, and Billick was great about it, and Belichick was a special teams coach himself. Harbaugh, of course, 14 years. The guys that have been there and understand the difficulty of what they have to deal with. And what makes a Harbaugh a unique coach, and I'm sure you've heard this, but the fact that a special teams coach has a touch on every player in the NFL, where the only other coach in the entire staff that has the same privilege is the strength coach, right? The offensive coordinator, the defense coordinator, nobody else has a touch on every player. So the special teams coaches had to learn how to negotiate with the head coach and all the offensive coordinator, defense coordinator about what players are going to have on the field. Because don't you think that special teams coach, Kevin, as many years as you were doing it, you were trying to find out who I was going to have on Sunday, right?
Well, absolutely. And you'd like to find that out on Tuesday so you can start setting your lineup for, as practice goes. And back in the day, it was always like you had the West Coast offensive head coaches that they'd like to have 6 wide receivers on game day because the passing game was so wicked important. But then you have, you can't use those guys in the kicking game. You have to have linebackers. You have to have athletic tight ends. So you have to have the ear of your head coach, and hopefully he has a dedicated belief that the kicking game is truly worth as part of a third of the game, because it sets the table. If you get great field position, offensive coordinators are happy. If you bury them inside the 10, how would you like to be a defensive coordinator and it's first and 10 on the -8? I mean, that's a great position to be in. So, we'll find out. And I think there's been some near misses already this year where guys are busting the ball out to the 40, 45 yard line. And I mean, you're almost in the red zone or high red zone anyway. So I think this is going to open up some eyes. It should be very interesting because special teams coaches are crafty guys. They're going to be working on all this crazy stuff like Matt's talking about to try and make it tough.
And that's what I just want to clarify before we go here. Kevin, I believe it was you said this is the way to go when we're talking about these dirty balls and the line drives. And do you think that in your mind that is the obvious strategic approach here?
Right now it is, because when I was looking at it, I'm thinking, hey, these guys miss hitting these balls, but these are talented guys. Their legs are like their foot's like a 9-iron. They don't miss hit very, very often. So when you start seeing balls being hit like this, they're being told to do it. And Matt's already confirmed it in my mind, because I just think that if you could give them a nasty, or to steal, you might want to put a dirty ball, Matt. You might want to get your name on that. But it's a hard deal. It's just there's going to be some miscues in the back end. And we saw what happened in Pittsburgh the other day, where the kid didn't feel the ball correctly. The ball goes in the end zone. It's a live ball. It was a touchdown for Seattle. I mean, it's going to open up some eyes. It really is. It is the way to go. Why make it easy on a return that can, break your back? Make it hard on them.
I actually would put trash cans out on, those big 50-gallon trash cans, and I would try to hit him inside of it with a pooch kick or try to line drive it wherever it was and get as close to that as I possibly could, because it to me, you've got to have an aiming point as a kicker. And these guys, I'm going to tell you again, you saw the 64-yarder last night. The kid's an athlete, right? I mean, any way you look at it. And they have to be able to do that or go find somebody else. I mean, it's just the way it is in the league. And I said it's easy. It's easy, but it's still, everything out there is not easy, or there'd be a lot more people doing it. So I don't want to take anything away from the guys that from out there doing their job. But it is and you're gonna still see more and more progress through that. But what the league does, it's a copycat league, but right now they're trying to define what that is. Last year was a data set. This year it still is. And then I would also like to understand what the injury rate is on that play now. I would like to understand what the statistics are, because if it didn't, Kevin, wouldn't you think if it didn't work last year from an injuries perspective, they would have reverted back to the old way or whatnot? Do you think injuries went down on that play?
Yeah, I think it did, and I'm going way back to when you had wedge busting, and you still have guys with full speed hits, but now everything's in a little bit more. I worry more about, the open shots guys are going to get, because guys are simply missing guys in space when they're trying to block these guys. And so returners sometimes are a little bit not protected. So I worry more about what's going to happen to return guys than I am the guys that are covering kicks and trying to block it. So we'll see. But I think they're moving in the right direction. At least it's a viable play, and I'm happy for my fellow special teams coaches that they can truly do the full job now.
And Lindsay, what he said about a viable play is critical for a kicker. The harder a play becomes, the harder the position becomes, the more value you become. So when Troy Vincent asked me back when it was still the kick extra point was at the 20-yard field goal, the ball was placed on the 2. I had the most consecutive extra points of all times. It was 474, 13 years without a miss, right? So he came right to me. He says, well, what do you think? I said, well, Troy, before you ever have a conversation, whatever you do, don't get rid of the play, because you devalue the position. You devalue the position, we pay less. Just like what Kevin was saying. There's only 4 phases of that special team. Now that there's 6, well, now my value just got a little bit better, right? So you want to value. It says, well, what would you do with the 2-point conversion? I said, you declare it, move the ball back to where it's at the 15-yard line. It's a 33-yard field goal. I'm going to tell you what, and I gave him that statistic on the 4-foot putt. It's going to happen. It's easy to miss. And it's exactly what happened. It went down 8 percentage points, right, Kevin? It went down to like 92, 93%, right?
No, I'm just going to say Buffalo 140, and the kid Luke had ball, but he missed the field. He missed an extra point. So it's a big deal. It's a big deal, and it's not an easy deal.
So if you guys are in alignment that this type of approach on kickoffs is the way to go, Shawn Syed earlier said that that's what he was expecting to see. Sam Schwartzstein, who essentially came up with the concept of this, presented to the NFL, implemented it in the XFL originally, said that he was expecting to see more line drive kicks. I like your phrase, dirty ball. We're going to go with that. Put it on a t-shirt. You should trademark it now. Why do you think we haven't seen everyone doing it?
They haven't figured it out yet.
They haven't now. And there are guys. It's a copycat league, so there are some guys that think outside the box. I'm not. I wouldn't consider myself to be that kind of guy. I'm always like this. But there are some guys that think outside the box, and they're the ones that are coming up with these ideas. And then other coaches are going to see the productivity of that play or that style of kick, and they're going to use it. I mean, if it's they would like to stay gainfully employed for more than 1 year. So I think if this is going to help them have better job performance and better team performance, then you darn well better take a look at it.
Here's my thought. You better know the rules. You play to the rule, which is if it's on the ground, it goes in the end zone. It goes to the 20 yard. You put the ball on the ground, right? They can immediately go once it hits the ground, right? So they don't have to wait for the ball to be caught. You take advantage of the rules, and that's what they're doing.
In essence, that's become hang time.
Yeah.
Inside the 20, ball hits the ground, the clock starts, so and there are guys that are thinking outside the box. So you're going to see more and more of this. And it should be a very interesting fall and winter season when guys are still kicking footballs in December and January.
Do you guys have any predictions? Right now, we are at a roughly 80% return rate. Average starting field position after kickoffs is at the 29. And we've seen a few of these line drive kicks that we weren't even sure were purposeful or not. Do you have any prediction as to return rate, average starting point, and how many of these kicks are this type of dirty ball kick that we're talking about by the end of the year, Kevin?
But, it went from week 1, there were 75.6 return, then it's 78. The 2-week average is 76.9. And, I think that but let's wait and see, because you're going to see maybe more of the teams are going to start to do this. And then to Matt's point, you throw in the winter, the wind, the mud. It should be interesting. I think because I don't think coaches want this ball getting real close to the 30-yard line to start off. I know offensive coaches do, but defensive coaches don't. So if this is going to be a way to kind of push that back a little bit, you might see that those averages, you might still get returnable balls, but maybe not with that kind of positivity that they're presently getting right now.
I'll say this, the kickers are going to get better too. They're going to get a lot better because they're going to be practicing. They're going to tackle. Yeah. And
they go in the gym and shoot jump shots all day. That's all those guys do. I mean, that's why they get so darn good at this stuff. I mean, you're not a linebacker that has to go do linebacker drills and be in meetings. They're out and they're out in the indoor facility practicing this stuff. There's going to be some interesting things that come down the road out of this. I guarantee it.
Well, look what happened to the punters and how they punt the ball now. They've got like 18, 20 different types of punts.
Well, that's good. That's because we're bringing the Australians in.
Right. And they're a heck of an athlete. You remember Darren Bennett when he first got in the league? My goodness, was he an athlete? It's the same thing with a kicker. You have to be an athlete. That's just what it is. Yeah.
And they are athletes. They really are. That's why they're all good golfers, Matt.
That's right. Shooting free throws, right?
Yeah, shooting free throws.
This has been a really fun conversation for Sam and I to have both of you available here to kind of pick your brain on this subject matter. And I'm really, really fascinated to see where this goes in the next couple of months. It feels like we're at the beginning of something that's going to look very different by the end of the year. So thank you so much for being with us, guys. Well, Sam, I feel like I've learned a lot, honestly.
But between the old special team stories, which, as I was a wedge buster myself, like that was my primary utility to a Division I college football team. So it's funny to see that go out of the game. But Lindsay, what my takeaway is that we need to have 100% dirty ball by week 5, right?
Yeah. I know. Well, that's actually what I was going to ask you as like to wrap this all up. What do you think? What are your predictions for end of season and what we're likely seeing? How many teams will adopt? Because, there is still the component of, I think it's interesting that they both came on and it was clear to them that this was the way to go. Whereas, Shawn was saying, I'm surprised we haven't seen more people do this, and also pointed out that people that he had conversations with had maybe received a little bit of pushback from inside buildings. So, I mean, it might take a little while to get this type of adoption, but it sounds like I feel more confident that we're actually going to get there.
Yeah, I think there's 3 confounding factors right now. One is at no point has the touchdown rate stabilized, even in the XFL. So I am interested in if the touchdown rate, many people have said it resembles more of a run. I think runs touchdown rate is like 3%. I'm wondering if that goes way up, if people just kind of freak out, even though that's not very high. I think that's number one. I think number 2, the weather. They mentioned that several times about how the weather can really screw this up on both sides. I'm really interested as we get into colder games, how the different surfaces start reacting, in particular grass versus artificial turf, and how the weather affects that. I think those are the 3 items that may lead to it taking a little longer than expected, but it seems like, according to Matt and Kevin and Shawn, this is the way to go. The kickers can do it, and the special teams coaches can coach it.
I am, big picture, just happy that we're at a point where we're kind of happy about kickoffs, right? Like, it feels like they've been trying to solve this problem for 15 years now, right? And haven't yet come up with an acceptable solution. Like, you want it to be a safer play, understood. But then, we went to the other end of the extreme. It was like, do we even need to do this anymore? Like, this is kind of feels like they finally landed on an answer that kind of checks all of the boxes we want checked. You want this to be a dynamic play that people don't go to the bathroom, when a kickoff is happening. You want people to have a reason to stick around and watch the play. And I feel like this solution actually kind of gives us that.
Right. And in the back of my mind, discussing a copycat league, this seems to be kickoff team winning right now. What do kickoff return teams do? Because there's always a reaction to take that back. And when do we start seeing really explosive returns or optimizing for gigantic touchdown rather than, just trying to get to the 30 or things like that, or letting it roll through the end zone or trying to push it through the end zone and playing the rules like that or something like that. I'm really interested to see how that continues on as the season and the seasons roll on.
Selfishly, too, as that conversation was going on, I think they were giving both of us some ideas of ways that we can track who's doing well and who's not doing well from a tracking data standpoint.
100%.
So we can create a few more metrics to help these teams figure out who's good and who's not. That's it for today's SumerSports show. Week 3 coming at you in just a matter of days. And we will be back again next week to break it all down.